At what point should a creator take on capital?
The best moment when a creator should take on capital is
Talk about some of the biggest overarching financial mistakes you've seen creators make.
a bad business idea. Has been creative control is so important for creators to always maintain. What's their baby? It's a big thing to protect, I think, by all means. Creators are really the new startups. They have the ability to break into Hollywood, break into Silicon Valley, other kind of bigger business ventures. The way we are structuring it, you are getting a big advance up front. We are taking just a revenue share that basically scales up and down every month. Once the deal is done, everything goes back 100% to the creator.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Creator Ops Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Schreiber. The goal of this podcast is to educate you on becoming a great operator in the creator economy. On today's episode, I talk with Lukas Runte, the co-founder and CEO of Everbloom. Everbloom provides flexible, non-dilutive capital for creators. They offer anywhere from $50,000 to $5 million in capital. There are no minimum monthly payments, no revenue pressure, and most importantly, you keep 100% ownership of your content and IP. Creators use Everbloom's capital to scale marketing, build teams, and launch new products. So far, Everbloom has deployed more than $15 million across 175 plus creators. During our conversation, Lukas and I talked through the right time for creators to raise capital and how to approach it with a clear plan, how to structure a creator's business the right way to stay tax efficient and investor ready, the full landscape of funding options available to creators today, common pitfalls and red flags creators should avoid when taking on outside money, and lastly, the future of creator financing and what it means for the next generation of businesses. And now, without further delay, here's my conversation with Lukas. At what point should a creator take on capital? You've seen and worked with a ton of different creators. What makes a creator in a good position to start thinking about taking on capital? And then what are those different routes and different questions that they should ask themselves?
What we have seen is the best moment when a creator should take on capital is when they know what they want to do with it. So if they have like an idea of a vision or like some kind of roadmap, something that they have seen working and they can see, okay, capital is really going to unlock the next step. So, on a smaller scale, often it is like, oh, if I double the amount of uploads I'm going to do, I'm probably going to double my revenue. This is, where often creators are starting, or that means then, okay, taking on capital for an editor. And then later stage, it's more like, hey, I always try to find these locations where I'm going to film. Let's rather, buy a studio or like rent a big studio where I can always bring in the same people and can build sets much faster rather than, jumping from location to location and organizing everything. So, those are just two examples of different stages, but, comes down to the same thing. Like, hey, I have some kind of idea what to use the capital for. That's when best use is being made, because obviously capital is not free.
What's a good way, or maybe a bad way that someone has utilized capital, maybe not with Everbloom, but just a poor way to utilize capital where, if you tell a creator they're thinking about X, Y, and Z, it's maybe not the best spot to inject capital into that part of the business. Have you seen any maybe poor examples?
That's a good question. I think maybe a poor example has been a bad business idea. When somebody has just like this crazy idea of, hey, I want to develop this next game, which is probably going to cost $1.5 million. I'm just going to get like $200K right now. And then they are stuck in the middle of like having a half finished game and, haven't really thought this through before, maybe listen to the wrong people prior to taking on the money. And then, it's ending up in a total waste of funding where they are not happy and they're still stuck basically with the capital that they have to pay back or the equity that they gave up in an earlier stage.
Yeah, the not fully flushed out idea. I think that's the beauty of YouTube and other social platforms is you can test in very sometimes micro environments and test in ways that don't need a ton of capital. And then once you've got that proof of concept, especially for YouTube, if it's a particular series or like you're saying, it's, when I create these videos, I know that I can get X amount of AdSense, or I know I'm going to get X amount of views. Here's the simple steps that I can take with this amount of capital. What is generally the amount of capital you see creators taking on? And let's maybe talk about YouTube creators specifically. If it's for a new studio, if it's for hiring, what is that range that you suggest and what have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, it always depends very much on the creator and their stage. So we always try to tailor it very much to the creator and like what their plan is. I don't think there's like a one size fits all answer, unfortunately, but we're usually investing in a range from like 50, 60K up to, multi-million. Obviously, when you're buying a studio and like really going above and beyond, or, trying to raise funding for doing a big production that you maybe want to sell to Netflix or something like that, it requires just a little bit more capital. But, often at an earlier stage, just 50K already making a huge difference, having that 50K up front to now, having that security to go out and hire for example, an editor. It ranges. I think, for example, our average is around 150K.
And where, for the creators that you guys have worked with, what other avenues did they explore before getting to you guys? I think it's important to kind of lay the landscape of the various funding routes. So you've got something like Everbloom, but you've got other routes. What have you seen that's worked well for other creators, and maybe some other routes that you wouldn't suggest?
Often creators, the first way to think about getting capital is like locking in a big brand deal or something like that. And I think that is always a good option depending on the stage that you are in. But it's obviously also quite limited. Like you have only that many ad slots that you want to sell before, it's diminishing returns also to the retention, for example, of your audience. So, but that's usually where creators go first. And obviously, many people know that back catalog licensing has been something that's been done for a couple of years. Also a model that's coming from music, which has been working well for some creators in the earlier stages. But it's been also, to be honest, quite an inspiration for us to do the way we are structuring our capital, because it's often quite intransparent, because creators don't really understand the decay rates of like month over month. How many views do my videos still get? It requires quite some expertise and technicalities to understand that. So it can cause moments where the creators have been giving up a lot of revenue that they could have maybe saved for themselves. And then another option that is starting to pop up more often is equity sales. So we have basically two parts there: either a minority, which means you're giving up a couple percentage of your company, let's call it like 5 to 20% or something like that. Often used by creators that really want to take a shot at like a moonshot project and like really build that next tech company that is led out of their community and like their channel. And then the majority, like equity buyouts, it's more of an exit scenario. The creator basically saying like, hey, I'm ready to make an exit for myself and sell, 70, 80% over time, maybe 100% to a roll up that is going to help me like really put fuel on the fire and like help me get to that next stage. But, eventually I'll be out. So I'm giving up my creative control to a new partner. But, a very interesting option that I love to see more of, because it like really creates that exit moment for creative founders also. So yeah, those are, I think, the key ones, besides obviously what we are doing, which is more of a capped advance, allowing the creator to take on capital and knowing exactly, okay, over time I'm paying this back by taking a revenue share, which scales up and down with my performance. So I'm not getting in any trouble. While, at some point the creators are done with the deal and never need to give up any creative control.
Let's go back to the back catalog for just a second. Will you explain the back catalog licensing and just break that down for people that may not know how that structure works? And then talk about how that kind of leads into the Everbloom model as well.
So essentially the back catalog licensing means, every channel has a set of videos that's been sitting there and were uploaded, and each of them represent almost like a media asset that is still generating revenue. So, over time, maybe a year later, this video still generates some kind of money. So there are companies out there that are basically buying out the back catalog and then monetizing that, and essentially, the creator is selling 100% of their revenue to their company, and this is then only relying on the revenue of the future videos.
Explain the companies that are doing that type of model and just what's their angle on that. Will you just dive into that a little bit more?
Essentially, it's a very data-driven business where they are looking at really the decay rates. Like, they have machine learning models that allow them to look at the decay rates of each of these videos and basically predict, okay, over the next 5 years, these videos are going to make X amount of money. Maybe we can monetize them further via different channels or running different types of ads on top of it. So we expect to make 2 million or something like that from the video, and we are buying it for a lump sum right now of 1.5 million. And, then there is a margin that those companies are making. But yeah, often it's not super clear to the creator. There's a big number and they don't really know, okay, how much value could I still get over the next 5 years from these videos? And, what could I do to also drive more value? And is it the right moment for me to make that exit by selling my catalog? Or do I rather want to keep those assets to myself and further monetize it without having to dilute my revenue without knowing how much it costs me?
What do you think just the pros and cons are of that type of kind of model? And I know you covered some of the cons there as far as the clarity around what your catalog is worth and what it's going to be worth in 5 years. Some of these companies have, like you're saying, very fancy machine learning and models to be able to understand that you may not have access to that. What else do you see as some of the pros and cons of something like that?
Yeah, I think, the big pro is really you get a big sum of money upfront, which can help you to unlock that next stage of growth, like we also talked in the beginning. And yeah, I think the big con, like I said, I think, I'm always coming back to this, but is the transparency. Like, if I want to take on capital, I kind of want to know, okay, like what is going to happen with those videos, and B, how much does it cost me to take on that capital? And I think that clarity and transparency is so important in a very small creator economy where everyone is trying to just make it, and there are often can be also bad players involved. So I think that's a quite important piece to just come in with the transparency and create a friendliness. I think much more besides that is that another con. I'm focusing a little bit on the cons because obviously those are the flaws that we saw with the model. Is that there's often also a tax trigger that comes with doing an asset sale like that. So now you have to pay capital gains tax if you don't have the right setup in place already. So you maybe get a lot of money up front, but at the end you need to pay a lot to the IRS. So that can cause also some friction. Where that's often an oversight later on that just comes after everything has been sold.
The tax stuff and some of those implications, I think sometimes creators don't think about that. I've heard this question asked a couple of times throughout LinkedIn and throughout other platforms, but what do you suggest is the best way to structure a creator business for long-term opportunities? And by long-term opportunities, I mean for a sale like this, for injecting capital. And structurally, I know the structures are different in different countries, but how do you guys like to see creator businesses from a tax and legal standpoint? Is it LLC? Is it, C Corps? How do you suggest or advise a creator think about their structure in the beginning when they're just starting to form that business entity?
I mean, I'm definitely not an expert here by any means. Obviously, we have seen some structures, but it's also often a combination of many things that require like some kind of tailored solution to the creator. From a general structure perspective, I think it always helps to have like one holding company that is kind of like can be the umbrella. And whenever there's also an asset sale or something like that of a specific revenue stream, it allows you to just like bring that money into the holding and be a little bit more tax efficient with bringing back those earnings to yourself, or like reinvesting it into other vehicles or in your business. So I think that's the main piece of advice I can give there. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think I don't feel too comfortable like giving the best advice.
That's okay. I was just curious on what you had seen, and the holding company is definitely something I think we're seeing more and more as well, especially if you're a creator and you've got, say, your own single member LLC and you've got that holding company up top. and let's say that's a C Corp, you can, like you're saying, you can use that as a place for all the revenue streams to come into. And then that's, you take all the money out of that at the end of the year or whatever. And that holding company is essentially net zero at the end. And there's various tax benefits to it. But also for, like you're saying, for investors or for people that come along and want to, purchase it. And I'm sure I'm missing something key that I'm sure a lawyer or accountant would say, actually, it's this. But generally speaking, that's kind of the structure that we're starting to see more, and especially with more operators and more partners that get with creators and partner with creators, where, the partner has their own LLC, the creator has their own LLC, and then they create a holding company together and say, all right, all the revenue is going to come into this. And then we will, you're going to take 50%, they're going to take 50%. We need to pay back X percent to something like an Everbloom. That's a little bit easier from an organization standpoint, which I think is helpful, especially keeping things clean and keeping the books clean. Just makes the process of getting capital much, much easier.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the right points, optimizing on flexibility, especially in such a collaborative economy like the creator economy is, where many partners are often involved that you want to leverage. And the type of business that a creator just is, like this multifaceted business with like many revenue streams that is very much like a holding company.
What red flags, Lucas, have you seen with financials and just capital within the creator economy when someone's looking at their options as far as where they could take capital from and who they could take it from? What are some of those red flags that someone should be aware of, or maybe it's just some of the questions that they really need to be asking that person? Because like you said, there's bad eggs in every industry. There's bad eggs in the creator economy that you need to be on the lookout for.
First of all, always important to understand like what's the cost of capital and what is going to happen in terms of creative control. Am I giving up anything? Like what is going to happen with my content, or the business that I'm running next to my content. But then second, also like what other value adds can the partner bring to the table beyond just the capital? I think it's at the end it's a big commodity, like the capital in itself. And I think there's much more that a good partner needs to deliver to a creator nowadays, and can deliver also to a creator. So I think that's an important piece of consideration whenever taking on capital.
Let's take a step back and talk about some of the just biggest overarching financial mistakes you've seen creators make, whether it's people that you've worked with or just people you've observed. What are some of those giant mistakes that you really want to try and avoid, especially if you're early on? But if you're later stage, how do you clean it up?
Probably the most important one is not really keeping track of financial KPIs, and not really knowing simple things like, what's my margin on this video, or this a, like I also said in the beginning, if someone is taking on capital, like is the capital enough to like get to that goal that I want to do? Is it a reasonable opportunity that I can reach at the stage that I'm in? So yeah, financial KPIs and like understanding how much money is really needed for my roadmap. And then I think honestly, and maybe a very obvious one, but still oftentimes seeing this, just paying your taxes. I think it's as basic as that, but too often we see, some creators having trouble with that, which, is also understandable. It can be quite intimidating. So I think, bringing in people that can help you not making those mistakes is quite important. And I think, that starts maybe on the accounting side, but also goes to many other things where, you don't want to just spend the money that you're making on everything else, but not really like freeing up your time again. So you're eventually ending up, burned out or in troubles with the IRS or, anything like that. So I think that whole system thinking and bringing in people that can help you is quite important.
Yeah, the tax stuff and the accounting stuff is something that I've seen more and more creator management companies start to offer as a service. I was talking with Charles Haynes, who runs Ziggurat out of London, and that's something that they've got a sister company that only does accounting for their creators. And we're seeing more. I just got intro to a company called Boring Stuff they're focused solely on bookkeeping and accounting for creators. So there's more and more opportunities and just good partners out there who understand the landscape. And while it is a little bit different, the creator stuff is different because there's, you're getting paid from YouTube, you're getting paid from brand deals. There's a lot of different just revenue streams potentially that you have to be careful of. But if you find the right people, they're going to understand that you're not the first and only business that's got 5 different, 10 different revenue streams coming in. But it's just important, like you're saying, to make sure that stuff is tied up. And there's a lot of similarities too with small local businesses and creator businesses too. There are various, maybe 1 or 2 people running them, and sometimes the bookkeeping can be a little bit of an afterthought till the IRS comes knocking and says, "Hey, where's my money? What's the deal here?"
Exactly.
One thing that I wanted to touch on was just the importance of maintaining control of the creator business itself. This is something that I've heard very consistently is just, hey, I'm interested in capital. I'm interested in someone coming in and potentially owning some of the company in exchange for X, but I want to maintain control. I don't want someone else putting, my name on a piece of content that I haven't, created myself or edited myself or approved myself. Talk about just the revenue share model with Everbloom that allows them to control their IP and their earnings as well.
That's a great point. Thank you for hitting that. I think the way we are structuring it is essentially you are getting a big advance up front. So, that can be up to 50-60% of what your previous year's earnings were. And that can be also across multiple platforms. And then we are taking just a revenue share that basically scales up and down every month until we hit our initial principal investment plus a flat fee. So the fee is the same no matter if you're paying back after 1 year or 5 years. And, after that, we are more a partner to you where we are not, dictating any way of driving any creative decisions or, putting you into one corner or another, but rather helping with like, hey, here are the challenges that you're having. Here are some people that we know, for example, for bookkeeping, or, you want to launch a product and bring it into Walmart, or, you want to produce a big show and like maybe put it on one of the big streaming providers. So, anything that really creators' dreams are, we are there to, help them accomplish it and like overcome these existing challenges. Yeah, again, without having to give up any creative control. Like once the deal is done, everything goes back to 100% of revenue to the creator, and the creator can just continue to work with us in a capacity where just a continuous partner or refinance in any way. But creative control is so important for creators to always maintain. So, it's their baby. I think it's a big thing to protect, I think, by all means.
I definitely think this is one of the coolest model I've seen in the creator economy. I think there's a bunch of different people doing it, different styles, but this really does allow you to maintain that control, which I think for a majority of the creator middle class, right, maybe 70%, 75%, they want to maintain control but they need that capital. They might need 50 to 100 grand or 150 grand to do a couple things. And after that, they're going to be in a good spot, especially if they're well financially tight and keeping an eye on that. They might just need a little bit of capital for a short amount of time without having to, hey, Lukas, we don't want to have to report to you for the rest of eternity because you own, X, Y, and Z. But there is that small portion of creators, they do want to give up 51%. They do want to give up the whole thing. And maybe they're at a spot where they're comfortable doing that. It's just, whereas a majority of the creator economy is still middle class and still maybe not a $20 million business, a 10 million. Maybe they're trying to get to their first million, and this is a nice way to do that.
Even beyond that, I think creators are really the new startups in Hollywood, but also beyond that, there's so much stuff happening. And because they are coming from a standpoint where they have really strong revenue, very much from day one, unlike many of the Silicon Valley founded startups, tech companies, they have the ability to just take out financing that is more based on the existing revenue, because they have this very steady growth, like very steady need for capital that is quite linear in terms of the trajectory. So that just creates a whole new opportunity field for these new startups going into breaking into Hollywood, breaking into Silicon Valley, or other kind of bigger business ventures.
Will you walk through a couple of the creators, Lukas, that you guys have worked with on the Everbloom side, and just give me kind of like their need from a financial standpoint, how they use the capital, and maybe just their overall experience. But I think specifically what the need was and how they use the capital, I think is really important, especially as other creators and other operators are mulling over, all right, what area could we inject some of this money into?
Maybe a good example is this amazing creator Jimmy Zhang, who is actually from LA, big streamer, did a lot of things there, also big on YouTube, and he saw the opportunity to basically take on some funding to really chase this dream of like him doing a full production of a real life dating show, like reality dating show, and renting this big house with his whole crew, with his friends, and filming this over a couple of days and weeks to get it out there. And with that, not only unlock a whole new content pillar for him, but also bump up his subscription revenue that he was running on Fourth Wall, where basically people would get early access. And I think he doubled his revenue on Fourth Wall. It's a monthly recurring revenue, so also a little bit more valuable. He doubled that by giving people early access to the next episode that is coming, and also generated a lot of views on YouTube, which then opens up again new opportunities. Other people are getting aware of him and want to collaborate and do more things. So I think that often just creators have the right intuition, because like when you get to that level, you have done so many things right. And I think he's a great example of like really pursuing then what he felt next, and like taking a little bit of the risk and saying like, hey, I'm putting in all of the money that I'm taking out from Everbloom in order to get to that next stage. And it really paid off for him by having it thought through from the beginning on.
And how much, if you can say, Lukas, how much did he end up taking from Everbloom?
I think it was a little bit more than 100K. I think between 100 and 150. It's relatively small still for what he did.
Yeah, relatively small compared to what a lot of Silicon Valley startups are taking on and pre-seed, especially now. It's a couple $1 million to kind of think through that idea. I'm curious if you're seeing, and if you guys have worked with any creators that are taking out money for specific products to launch. Have you seen that?
Yes, we have seen that. We have had one creator who actually built his own Swiss-produced chocolate bar, and is still in the works. He's really good also on shorts, which it works very well for commerce, and just like showed us the numbers at an early stage of like what he drove for other companies, and that really gave us also the confidence to double down and like give him a little bit of extra cash to pursue that idea. We already invested before, like provided some capital into his business. So that was one. We're working on a couple of other things where, it's more about getting creators into those big retail stores like Walmart and Target, which I can't really disclose yet, but those things are obviously quite exciting because it just generates a lot more scale from day one, as well as more working with streaming providers and figuring out, could there be bigger productions led by creators. They then can be sold to those streaming providers, and that is obviously also a dream of like many of the creators.
Say more about that, Lukas, if you can. I know you can't say too much about the Walmart and some of the Target stuff, but tell me kind of more about what you're thinking as far as the partnership with some of the streaming. What do you mean by that?
So essentially, the power of attention has obviously shifted a lot more towards creators, and I think streaming providers such as Netflix, Amazon Prime, and others are seeing that. So they, like MrBeast is the best example with Amazon's Prime deal, like where they saw, okay, they can probably drive a lot more subscription revenue for Amazon Prime by working with MrBeast and producing a show. And I think we'll see that kind of like trickling down to some of these other creators that are really talented entertainers and filmmakers and could with the right setup, like help push some subscription revenue towards some of these streaming providers, and like bring the attention that they have built already on their own channels to those streaming providers, and also make a good amount of money for themselves. So that's something that we are currently actively exploring and trying to get some of the creators within our portfolios connected to the right people there.
When you look at the minimum for a creator to take on financing, I know for you guys it's around that kind of 60 to 75 grand is what they need to be making a year. Do you think that's the best number for all creators, no matter what, as far as taking on capital in general? I know there's very specific one-off stuff, but what is the minimum threshold in your head that you think is appropriate that a creator needs to reach in order to prove to themselves and to a lender that they're in it for the long haul and they can pay that money back?
Yeah, obviously it depends a little bit always on the content and kind of like where the business is heading and like what's the setup. I mean, now like 100K minimum a year is like really okay. That's what we feel comfortable. It's just a matter of fact, the bigger the creator, the lower the flight risk. So it's a lot more about avoiding the ones that are not going to be motivated over time. So I think that's an important piece that we always try to take into consideration, the qualitative aspect of like, hey, who is this creator? Where do they want to go? How do they want to use the money? Like the worst thing that can happen is that the creator is taking on some funding from us and like eventually realizing, oh, I don't really like know what I'm going to do. And now they're paying us back over time. And it just creates this unfortunate scenario where the motivation goes down. So we always try to like find strong synergies with the things that we can like bring to the table and the motivation that the creator is.
This might not be the most fun question, but what does happen if someone can't pay back that money? Do they owe you guys a certain amount? What are maybe some of the repercussions of that long term for the creator?
We never make the creator personally liable, so it's always just in the aspect of their business. So they are not personally liable by any way. It's often that we are trying to figure out like, hey, what can still be done here? Can we find a way forward? I mentioned the back catalog being an asset that can still be monetized over time. So there's always some revenue that can still trickle in over time, and it just takes a little bit longer. But at the end of the day, we're not there to chase people for the rest of their life and like ruin their existence in any way, but rather develop a plan that can put everyone in a good spot.
What do you think, Lukas, the future of creator financing looks like over this next maybe decade or so? What do you think is going to start to pop up even more? I guess I'll just leave it there.
I'm very excited for the future because I think that the developments that we see now with equity investments at an earlier stage in creators is also gonna create a little bit more this flywheel towards the back end, where there are gonna be some more exits naturally being made for creator businesses. So I think that whole financing landscape, getting another vehicle, is going to be quite interesting for many creators to launch their dream startup. So I think that we're gonna see just much more of that over the years. And then I think other stuff that I'm excited about is like these product launches and like film financing things where it just requires a different level of capital. So I think the check sizes are just gonna grow over time, which is going to be very fruitful for the whole creator economy in general, I think.
If you could get one message out to the creators on YouTube or just any creators in general and their managers, what would that message be to them?
I think it's a very important piece to focus on building some kind of vision, some kind of roadmap towards how this business should look like. I think many creators are getting put into like one corner over time without really realizing, the direction that they were going. Not every creator needs to be a founder like Mr. Beast, but many creators can also just stay a small team or even like a one-person business. And I think that's a very important question to ask yourself early on. But if you're if you have some kind of ambition, like start thinking about that early, because it helps you to make the right decisions over time, and like pick the right partners and like build the right team. So being early on quite firm on the vision that you are creating, but being flexible on the way to get there is, I think, a big piece.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Creator Ops Podcast. If you're interested in chatting more about the creator economy, send me a message on LinkedIn or email me at thomas@creatoropsmedia.com.